Well, we advertise it as an update, so should we get to the update? The good news is I'm in remission, y'all.
And with that, welcome back, Big Dog, from the studio at the Connecticut School of Broadcasting in Charlotte. This is Adrian Brown with As the Buckle Turns, episode 20. Welcome back, Bucklers, wherever you may be listening. Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google Play, Podbean, YouTube, Soundcloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, everywhere you find this podcast. I appreciate everybody for always tuning in. As always, please make sure you leave some 5-star reviews, like the page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter to keep up with the updates as far as the show goes. And yeah, you guys are always awesome, man. Like I said, I always appreciate that. Yeah, Roman, good to have you back, man. Let's just go ahead and get that out the way. I mean, him announcing his leukemia is in remission again. Good for him. That's the benefits of being a high-level athlete, being in the shape he's in, probably having the genes he has as well, which is mainly what we're going to be getting into today, genes and makeup of people, but mainly family matters and family ties and things like that, because this was brought up as a topic to me by somebody maybe about a month and a half ago. I never got a chance to get into it with graduation and looking for work and everything outside of my regular work now. So it's been a minute for me being able to get back in here and talk about this. But just saying though, Roman, I'm just so glad the guy's back. I'm glad he's feeling better. And I'm not going to really address all the nonsense that's been going on online as far as the talk about it being a work and what type of leukemia he had and things like that. Matter of fact, I'll link you guys in the description for this. There was a leukemia association who actually heard a lot of chatter about this, and they put out a thread just about Roman and everything about how leukemia treatment works. I may link that into the thread or the description for this, wherever you're listening to it at. It's a pretty cool thread for you to read through. And I think it was an eye-opening situation when it came to the people who wanted to point out, or have their biases confirmed that how much they believe this is a work. Well, if it was a work, you all got worked. You should all be ashamed of yourself. You're probably just mad at yourself in that aspect. You should probably check that thread out. It's pretty cool. It talks about levels of leukemia, levels of treatment, explaining why not everybody loses their hair, not everybody loses body mass and things like that. People really need to get themselves educated when it comes to talking on these mics and putting out this content and hitting send on Twitter when it comes to certain things, because they really aren't really sane when it comes to things, especially when honestly, they should probably be happy that their cash cow is coming back, because they're, like I said before, the more they bash the guy, the more their ratings and stuff went up. So they're getting their guy back. They're getting the guy back that probably moved the needle the most for them. So they should probably be happy, instead of rather just sitting around here, claiming cancer was a work. Talking about shame on Vince if it was. Shame on you guys for even thinking such a thing. More than anything. Here I am talking about it anyway, and I said I wouldn't go into it, but trust me, that could be a whole rant of an episode. Again, good to have you back, Roman. I don't know why Strong came through. Big Dog Strong came through. All the tweets, all the prayers. Everybody who uplifted that guy, props to you here. The Roman Empire is always going to be safe on ATBT. Always. This is a Roman friendly place. Heck, this is a everyone friendly place, as long as everybody is fair and everything when it comes to wrestling commentary. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. One of the main things you always hear me say on here a lot of times is hypocrisy of a mindset, which is what IWC logic really equates to, which is what, the YWC logic equates to a lot of times as well when it comes to certain topics and certain wrestlers, when it comes to this community. The community, it can go either way a lot of times when it comes to opinions on certain things, and everybody's entitled to all of them. But my whole thing has always been be consistent. And when something doesn't measure up to your narrative, don't acknowledge either the fact that you were wrong about something, or acknowledge the fact that your opinion on it is different based on a certain set of biases. And that's the thing that a lot of them won't admit. Now, I don't never mean to truly bash people or get on people a lot of times for how they think about certain things. But I mean, we got to keep it real here on this, folks. If you're going to have outrage about something, make sure it's consistent. Don't sit there and be convenient about your phony outrage. And the issue I'm bringing up here today is the hypocrisy of the mindset of insert wrestler here is only pushed because of insert wrestler here is in their family. Let that sink in for just a second, and you'll probably know immediately where I'm going with this. Before I do that, let's just get into some families that are popular or been famous in this business, just real quick, so you know you have a baseline of people that you know who they are and who they're related to. If you want to start with one, let's start out over in Puerto Rico, I guess. Let's start with the Colones, Primo and Epico's family and Carlito's family. Carlos Colon is a legend of this sport. He really is. And he's mainly a legendary promoter, but he was, if I'm not mistaken, he was a decent wrestler for a while, but he's mainly known for his promotion ability, his ability to book the territory. And like I said, he's their guy. And that family is that's the bloodline there. Now, a lot of people may not have realized that Carlito and those guys have come from such a extensive background as that. Like I've always said, it's easier for you to book somebody as a character, or you're always going to have a job in this business if you have a pedigree, if you have a bloodline. Think about how long Primo and Epico have been there doing much of nothing. That's probably based on their bloodline. That's probably based on their last name. Of course, you got the Harts, / Smiths, Bret Hart, his family with Stu Hart and all his kids, along with Davey Boy Smith, who married into their family. And of course, you've got Natty, who's come all the way through there. You had David Hart Smith there before, or Harry Smith. Thanks, Phil, for telling us that. And who was there for a short period of time in the WWE. He's still working in other smaller promotions around the world still. I mean, good for him. But it's like I said, again, he probably only got signed because of his background. Same thing with Natty. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. Of course, you've got the Anawais. We've been through that family tree extensively here. Go back to listen to episode 12. I go over that a lot. We know who comes from that tree, starting with the High Chief Peter Maivia, Sika, and Afa. Of course, you got their extended family, Jimmy Snuka, Haku, and all those guys, all the way down to The Rock, who's probably their headstone of the entire bunch. You saw the star he became. And then, of course, after him, you've got Roman, you've got Nia Jax, Sean Maluda, you've got Sifa Fatu and those guys coming up behind them who are still moving, Jacob Fatu as well, moving up in the independent circuit. Moving on, of course, you got Jeff Jarrett and his father, legendary promoter as well in the Tennessee area, moving through there. You got the Wyndhams / Rotundas, I guess. We'll bring those up later as well. Bray and Bo. We'll get into that in a minute as well. You got the Hennigs, Larry the Axe, Kurt, Mr. Perfect, and all the way down here to Curtis Axel, or Joe Hennig. And of course, you got Randy, his triple bloodline as well. Bob Orton Sr., Cowboy Bob, and all the way down to Randy, who's a 14-time champ now, I believe. Randy's one of the GOATs. Of course, you got the Rhodes family, Dusty, rest in peace, and his two sons who come after him, Dustin and Cody. And all the way down here. I mean, even now, even executive-wise, you got the McMahons. Vince Sr., Vince Jr., Shane, Stephanie. And they've got 6 children of their own, so they're probably going to be in the business as well. So wrestling will always, in some way, shape, or form, be a family matter. And it's easy to fall into nepotism in this business because wrestling doesn't necessarily need the most, you don't go to college for it. Okay. You don't really have to, you don't have to go to school for it. All you really have to do is watch and learn. Or if you really want to be an in-ring talent, all you got to do is be able to go through the basics and make it through training. You're going to be serviceable to somebody. Because you don't need to necessarily be the best of athletes. You don't have, it helps, but you don't have to be the best of talkers. All you have to do really is either be entertaining or just have something about you that says it. Something about you that stands out. Be willing to work. Be moldable. And also, like I said, just be willing to be a star, not just be another guy. Okay, it's easy to fall into the path of, okay, I'm just going to pass this down to my son. It's easy to make this the family business. Like I said, if you go back and listen to episode 12, even bring it up in episode 18 in Contender when I'm talking about Charlotte. Passing this down to your children, a lot of times it's pretty much expected. Whether they choose to go into the, quote, family business, a lot of times is on them. But you can't fault them for wanting to, the elder statesmen and women, for wanting to pass this down to their children and keep them in it, because it just makes most sense. I mean, you have people like, the Usos and Roman who probably wanted to play football or something like that rather than go into this initially. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, it just so happens maybe that wasn't for them. So the family business was always an option. Same thing with Charlotte. She went to college. She wanted to be a personal trainer. Okay, she probably got bored with that. Moved on to something else. What else? What better else to move on to than the family business? There's nothing wrong with any of that. But here's where the hypocrisy comes in a lot of times. And you'll understand, as I always say, by the time I get to the end of it. There seems to be a willingness to give more credit to a wrestler who's second or third generation if the generations before them weren't necessarily at a certain level. And there seems to be a willingness amongst a certain group of fans, I should say, to give less credit to a second or third generation talent if the talent that came before them was like superstar Hall of Fame level. You understand what I'm saying by that? Because I can't think of any more glaring examples than a few I'm about to bring up right here. A lot of times these fans here, some of them, well, a certain group of fans, I should say, a lot of them, they'll love Tessa, but dislike Charlotte. Last time I checked, they still have famous fathers. They'll love Cody, but dislike Roman. Last time I checked, they both have famous fathers. But it's just a matter of the fact is that you're seen as stick it to the man or have done it on your own. But last time I checked, Cody's last name really isn't Rhodes. He really did borrow that from his father's character. You got to think of it in that way. In the end, it's just like I said, it's more hypocrisy than I can stand sometimes. But when they don't see it, and then when you point it out, it's always to the point. It's like, well, so and so earned it, but so and so it was given to them. I can't really explain it. A lot of you may have seen it online. You may see it sometimes. A lot of you probably pointed this out to yourselves. So I'm probably not saying anything different that you may have thought for yourself. Last time I checked, I don't remember them playing too much off of Carlito biting those apples and spitting them in his faces, bringing up his family ties to the Colognes too much in his initial run. I don't remember that. So I'm pretty sure he was there simply because of his family ties. But a lot of people don't understand that during the Ruthless Aggression era. Okay, Primo and Epico, I'm pretty, like I said, they're there simply to be good hands because they, like I said, Vince probably knew they were well trained, they were groomed the right way because of their family ties, that he knew they would come in, they'd be good workers, they'd keep their heads down, they probably wouldn't even care about their roles. If they got to push, good. If they didn't, they're still going to go out there and work things to the best. They're never going to mail it in. Okay, that's how deep the Colognes lineage goes. They understand how to work. They understand the business, period. And then if you come over here and you talk about somebody like Natty. Okay, Natty literally comes out there with a remix to the Hart Foundation theme. She's literally out there. Pink and purple jackets and everything, finishing people with sharpshooters. She's basically take the whole Hart family legacy, feminized it, and everybody's cool with that. Like I said, I don't hear a lot of people talking about her family ties. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Now, keeping it real, Jeff Jarrett probably did book things and kept himself on top a lot of times when he was booking himself the same way his father would a lot of times. So the apple didn't fall far from the tree there. But if we move down to, say, the Rotunda boys and Bray and Bo, Bray is legit real name. He's named after Wyndham. His first name's Wyndham. He's named after his Uncle Barry. And a lot of you would probably say, Bray wasn't necessarily pushed because of the Rotunda name. And he didn't really get to be a world champion because of it. But like I said, he has that in his blood. It's part of who he is. His Uncle Barry, keeping it real, is a legend. He is a member of the Four Horsemen. He is a Hall of Famer. And he's a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion. Stuff like that matters. His father's former WWF Tag Team Champion. They're one of the few father and son champions that have held titles like that in wrestling. Bo as well. I understand they may not put too much emphasis on that initially, but you can't ignore it once you find out about it. He has family ties in the business too. He's a second. They're both Bray and Bo. They're both second generation wrestlers, but I don't hear a lot of people bringing that up a lot of times simply because of the fact, again, maybe just maybe their dad wasn't really that famous. And bringing it all the way down to the Hennigs, of course, Larry the Axe, Kurt Hennig, who was considered probably the best wrestler ever to never hold the WWF or WCW or NWA titles, but he was champion of the AWA. He's probably considered the best guy never to hold any of those other major titles, but he's probably the best Intercontinental champion of all time. And his son, Joe, known to most of you guys as Curtis Axel, he won the title on Father's Day. And they made a big deal about the fact that he did it because he is Mr. Perfect Son. But here's the thing, he's coming out with a remix, or hipper remix, I guess, of his own father's music. He was even using the Perfect Plex for a while, but nobody made a fuss about it. Again, it's just typical selective outrage. And a lot of people believe he deserves better because he's Mr. Perfect Son. Some people say it simply writes itself because he's his son, but that means a lot of people don't really understand how this really works. Never have, they probably never will until they listen to a show like this. I mean, his lack of push is more due to the fact of how the company sees him and more of a fact that how he's never really put himself over as he really could have when it comes to his actual abilities. I don't think it really has much to do with the company itself. But you can't sit there and say he deserves better because who he's related to and downplay other people because of who they're related to. And then there's somebody else who's had a pretty successful career because of his last name, and Randy Orton. Both his grandfather and father are Hall of Famers. They're two of the more famous people from their generations. And not even because of how they wrestled, simply because of the characters they were. Randy himself, like I said, they used his father and they used his third generation ties to promote him initially, which is what you have to do when you're introducing somebody like that to, to television for the first time. You have to. You got to have some sort of backstory. And him being a third generation wrestler is just as important a part of his story than anything. Okay, initially, there was a lot of Randy sucks and you can't wrestle initially as well, but I think a lot of that passed the more he found his own identity. Randy's one of the best ever too. I've got him in my own personal top 10. I think the guy's that good. But at this point in his career, you can't say anything about Cowboy Bob and Bob Orton Sr. when it comes to him. When it came to things like the Legend Killer and the Viper and the Apex Predator and all that stuff, that's all Randy. And nobody mentions a thing about that. But like I said, Randy didn't want to wrestle initially. He was a military guy. He went AWOL. Got dishonorably discharged as he should have. He had no intention of going to the family business. He's another one of those who didn't. But at this point right here, his family ties have nothing to do with what he became. But then I bring you all the way down to this guy right here in Cody, who everything about him, outside of the Stardust gimmick, everything about him was Dusty this and Dusty that. Rhodes this and Rhodes that. Okay, say what you will about, Dustin. Once he became Gold Dust, that whole the natural Dustin Rhodes and stuff he did in WCW and everything, that was a far gone memory. He finally became his own character. He finally got something, he ran with it. He became his own man. He was no longer Dusty's son. But to this day right here, every single thing about Cody is Dusty's son. Everything. Which is why a lot of times I refer to Cody as the other Rhodes. Okay, Dusty and Dustin are stars. Cody is the other guy. Don't get me wrong, every single thing he was given, he did the best of his ability with it, and he kind of did well with it. But it never got to the point in which they wanted to. And it never got to the point, I don't even think, even he said he's gotten lazy. He had gotten lazy towards the end of his run in WWE. I think it was time for him to go. And honestly, I think his body's betraying him right now too, but that's another story, which is weird. I say that because he doesn't really do that crowd-pleasing style that you hear me talk about a lot of times. And everybody constantly was saying, well, not everybody, those people, I got to make sure I clarify that, but those people, they constantly would always say he deserved better because he was Dusty's son. But here's the thing. when a woman like Charlotte is succeeding the way she is on her own, a lot of you say she doesn't deserve, she's only getting what she's getting simply because she is Ric Flair's daughter. Or you'll sit there and you'll crap on Nia Jax for doing certain things that you don't like, or because she may botch something, you'll be like, oh, it must be good to be related to The Rock. You know what? It is. Just like it's good to be related to Ric Flair, because you have a model to follow. And like I said that before in episode 18. Go back and listen to it if you haven't. But this whole notion of crapping on somebody simply because they have a pedigree, simply because they have some family, to be able to instill some values in them, to have a model for professionalism, especially just because they have a family member that's successful. Don't crap on them because of that. Like I said, Dusty was very successful too. He was a successful wrestler. He was a successful booker. He was a successful writer. Heck, he's the godfather of NXT, more so than Triple H. Dusty was no mid-carder. Dusty was no jobber. Dusty is a legend. I'm saying Cody only won the NWA championship simply because of nostalgia. So don't sit there and put somebody over for their relative at 1 minute and put somebody else down because their relative is just as famous. Like I said, one of the main issues I bring up a lot of time is how much people love Tessa Blanchard, but they'll have a tendency to put down Charlotte. And I hate to point this out to you. The only reason you will do that is because Ric Flair is who he is, and Tully Blanchard was who he was. Okay? I love Tully Blanchard. The slingshot suplex is one of my favorite finishers ever, because who else could get that move over but that guy? Okay, if you don't know what I'm talking about, Google it. YouTube, and I'm pretty sure there's some GIFs of it out there. But because Tully Blanchard never reached the level of Ric Flair, you think Tessa has earned it a little bit more. You guys give her a little bit more respect because her father isn't nearly as famous, even though he is a Hall of Famer. But let's be honest, he's still not Ric Flair. Never was. Honestly, he was the lower mid-card Ric Flair. That's who he was. And like I said, you will give Tessa more credit because her father wasn't as famous because of that. Okay, you'll chop Roman down because he's in the same family as The Rock. You'll chop him down because of that. But at the same time, you'll have no issue with Bray Wyatt becoming world champion because his father was just a tax write-off character. He was never a world champion, even though his uncle was. Okay, you can't have it both ways, because it's easier for you to have a story. It's easier for you to introduce a character to people if they have something like that in their background. Okay, don't penalize these people for that. Don't penalize these wrestlers for having a bloodline, for having a pedigree, for having a family. I've said I got into it with somebody on Twitter about this. It wouldn't matter Charlotte Flair's name if she wasn't Ashley Fleer. Okay, say she was Ashley Wilson and she wasn't related to somebody you knew. She'd still be 5'11", an athletic freak of nature, still killing it in the ring. She'd still be able, and she still had the same physical attributes, but her last name wasn't Fleer. She'd still be killing it on a nightly basis. It's just easier for her to book herself and make outfits as a character and make a remix of her dad's theme song because it's a good foundation to have. See how that works? Okay, it just would have been a little bit more difficult for her to build up a character if she didn't come from a pedigree. That's all there was to it. But physically, if she was still the same person, she'd still be killing it in the ring on a nightly basis. Okay, if Roman Reigns was not Joe Anoa'i, he was just Joe Smith, not the basketball player, but he was just Joe Smith. He'd still be an athletic guy. He still had the same look and everything. He'd still be in a decent position. Again, he'd still just have had a more difficult time finding a character. He would have had to start from the bottom. But it's easier to push somebody if you have, people to vouch for you. People that have been in the business, like your family, who can attest to your work ethic, okay, who can attest to you as a person. Now, a lot of times we know family will have a tendency to talk you up a little bit more. But in a business like this, when everybody knows everybody, when a family, when everybody knows, what the stuff you came from, you hope that the sins of the father, let's say if your father wasn't necessarily the best known worker or the best person to be around in the locker room or something like that, you would hope that it wasn't passed down to you. But when you have references like that, okay, when you have a guy like The Rock who can vouch for you, okay, when you already have relatives in the business or cousins or whatnot who are already in it, who can tell you about your work ethic, how hard you work, the type of person you are, the character you have, it's no different. I said nepotism is par for the course in this business, whether it's talent in the ring or whether it's people backstage. Vince Russo's talked about this quite a few times on his podcast. When Jeff Jarrett started Global Force Wrestling, who did he call? He called his normal guys. He called Dutch Mantell. He probably called Bruce Pritchard, all those guys like that, but he didn't call Vince. But still, you're always going to get the band back together if you start something new. And if you were to go to a different promotion and one of your buddies happen to get released from another promotion, you're going to tell your people at that promotion to give your buddy a call. Everybody looks out for everybody. Everybody eats. That's how this is. And family is no different. And honestly, I think it's like that in every aspect of life, especially business. You got a chance to hire one of your old college buddies. He's down on his luck or something like that. You're going to do it. If you can attest to the work ethic of one of your family members and you're running a business on your own, more likely you're going to hire that person. Or at least if you're not in a position of hiring, you're going to put in a good word for your boss and tell them to hire that person. Like, hey boss, my cousin's been out of work for a while. He's got a degree in so-and-so. He held that job for about 6 years. I can attest to his work. If you give him a shot, he probably won't let you down. There's nothing wrong with doing that. If you've never done it at least once before in your life, maybe you're not necessarily the best of friends or the best of family member. It's okay. Pedigree matters, especially in the entertainment business like this. So again, there's nothing wrong with a pedigree. There's nothing wrong with family. There's nothing wrong with hiring family. There's nothing wrong with pushing somebody based on their family. There's nothing wrong with giving somebody a job based on family. Okay? You don't choose your family. You're just simply born into it. So if you hate on somebody for who they're related to, you're simply just hating on them for being born. And that's not cool. That's as the buckle turns for this week, everybody. I appreciate everybody for always being patient with me when there's no uploads and haven't been able to keep you guys updated as far as why there have been no episodes lately. But like I said, I'm doing my best to make sure I'm able to record more often. But trust me, it's going to be hit or miss a lot of times. But I'm going to continue doing this show. Okay, I'm trying not to lose too many of you. I'm going to try and keep you all in here. But by all means, don't give up on me just yet. So anyway, like I always say, make sure you give a like, subscribe, share, follow. Like the page on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, give me some shares, give me some 5-star reviews, and a new episode drops every Saturday unless I say otherwise. I'm going to make sure I get back to doing that on a regular basis. So stick with me. So until then, it's Satan. Seth Buckle Turns. See you next time.